So, welcome to today's live event. We're going to talk about Bandita and how she goes white over winter. And this is really special around here because we don't have that many stoats that go white every winter here because of where we are in the UK. The further north you go, the more white stoats you get. So as you get up into Scotland, you'll get more of these wonderful white stoats. And the reason she goes white is obviously to blend in with the winter landscape. But over the years, we're getting less and less snow, but the gene pool is still there within these stoats to turn white at winter. But these are some of the images. So I'm just going to talk you through that process and the first sort of glimpses that we see in November time when she starts doing that remarkable change where she changes her coat completely. So this is her very, very early stages. I can just see, because I know the animal really well, there isn't any obvious signs there, but because I know her really well, she's just got a tiny bit of extra white around the muzzle, and then as the sort of days go on, there's just a tiny bit more showing, and that's always our first sign. A tiny little tip on her tail where the black is, just above the black, they start this whitening process along the tail, and now look at her tail. 24 days on and her tail is almost pure white, and then we look at her paws and gradually going up her paws she's turning white, and that then comes up from her paws and envelops her whole body almost, with the back being the last place to change colour. But that's just one of my favourite shots from this winter because she's half and half there with a coloration. And it just looks fabulous with that scenery. And this is probably got to be one of my... That's another favourite shot. I've got so many favourite shots of this. This is a wonderful shot of her curling up. This was a very cold night. And this is how stoats sleep, curled up in a tiny, tiny ball. And here she is on the wall, out on her adventure. Yeah, so quite sort of special footage. So that's showing some of her going white over winter, and it's just a remarkable process. Some reports say they can do this within a week, this process, but I've never seen it happen that quick ever. It's usually over a period of a couple of months, and she now won't go any whiter. Her coat is now fixed. She'll be transitioning back, starting to transition back in February, and definitely into March. She really changes quickly back then, but again it's the same. It's the same process. It's more gradual, and she doesn't look quite as beautiful sometimes when she's changing back. But it's known as a catastrophic molt when they change their complete coat to a different colour. But I just love it, and I love to see it every year. So in our garden, and I've seen about 10 different, 10 to 15 ermine stoats in this country, and it's there's different reasons, and people think different reasons, but it's mainly down to genetics and day length and temperature drop. But in the warmest winter, which was 2014, the Met Office issued a warning saying we're going to have the coldest winter on record, a bit like we had in 2010. It ended up being the warmest winter on record, and in that year I filmed a pure white stoat on a trail camera, and that was at a low level as well, much lower than we are here. So the genetics is one of the key factors as far as I'm concerned, and then it's day length, and then temperature change as well. But it's a fascinating project. But the further north you go, the more stoats you'll see that go ermine. So if you end up higher up, there's literally a band around the world where stoats live, and the higher north you go, the more of these wonderful ermine stoats that you see. And these were used in royal garments, the fur from them. There was literally tens of thousands of stoats imported into this country to make the royal garments. And all those little black bits you see in the royal garments are actually stoat tails around the crown, around the royal garments, and I'm literally like counting the stoats. So yeah, it's not something I particularly like to see because I know each tail is a wonderful animal like Bandita, but their fur was very, very sought after at one stage in history. But stunning little animal. So what we're going to look at next though?
We can look at the bit of fighting that we had.
Oh yeah, this was just the other night when we had some snow. Here I am popping some food out as usual. And then this is quite extraordinary. We've got Bandita. She's absolutely fearless. She, she's a relatively small stoat, but when you watch this, it's just quite extraordinary. She literally doesn't mess around, fearless. These owls potentially are capable of doing a lot of harm, but she just takes literally no nonsense. That's why she has reigned here for so many years. She's been with us. She was born here in 2016, and then she's been with us ever since, really, which is quite incredible that she's managed the whole territory here. And her mother was the same, much bigger stoat, female stoat, her mother, but absolutely formidable attitude. And that's why she's doing so well. She'll be coming up to 5 years old this year. Stoats, normally live to about 7, but in the wild you rarely get them living to 2 years old. But you can just see, it's just wonderful. I was filming this outside in the hide as well, but this is done with a fixed camera, this one. But she decides she's going to just eat alongside the owl. But you can see the size difference there. Weight for weight, the owl is heavier and potentially more dangerous, but yeah, she's just got that attitude. She's absolutely fearless. Interesting, when we saw her up there the other day, she actually jumped right off there when one of her sons, he'll be much heavier than her. She'll be around about 240 grams and her son will be more than 100 grams more, so a much bigger stoat. Some of her sons are very, very large and very, very boisterous, and have taken her nest this winter a couple of times. She makes a nice sort of nest, or takes over like a rat's nest, and in a hollow tree down the valley. And a few weeks later, the son has taken that nest over and pushed her out. But come the spring, she'll have her way and have another litter of kits here, hopefully. So are we on to questions next?
Bit of painting.
Oh yeah, we're going to look at the paintings. So I did a painting I did of Bandita, and this just takes you through a process of the painting I did when she was in her ermine coat. This is just drawing out the outline, and this is just quite a small painting of her, but I enjoyed doing it. I mean, I've painted in her little mask there. That's why she's called Bandita, because it looks like she's wearing a mask, because she often retains the ginger around her eyes. And she's got little nicks in her right here, which is done by Tawny Owl, Bomber, caught her a couple of times, and so did her daughter. She actually had a fight with her daughter Crackle out here, and it was quite a sort of brutal fight, and Bandita ended up with an injury, as did her daughter. And the daughter actually had her kits just 2 metres away from where I'm standing here, underneath some decking next to my studio door. So yeah, I mean, absolutely fascinating animal, and I love filming her, and she's always a challenge. She's been here 4.5 years, and she's still a really tricky animal to film, and as soon as she gets any inkling that you're around, she's gone and she just disappears. But I've learnt all of her little pathways, and managed to get some lovely stuff on her. And if I put a new camera out, like if I popped a GoPro out the other day, she was running backwards and forwards, and I popped a GoPro out, and she's just coming along towards the GoPro, which was absolutely great to see. And then she just veers off as soon as she spots it about 5 metres away. So she's always like that. I've popped cameras out there on the wall, and she just evades anything new. She'll actually walk around behind it as if she knows which way it's filming, and looks at it from behind, and then toddles off in the opposite direction. But that's part of her charm, really, is how difficult she has been to film over the years.
So we've got time for a few questions, I think.
Yeah, we'll take some questions.
So the first question here is, do all stoats turn white in winter, or is it more common in areas which usually have stow? And that comes from Kate on Twitter.
Yeah. So around here, I would say it's probably about 3 to 5%, if that. Just literally where we are here, maybe 3% of the stoats will turn white in winter. I've known over 50 stoats passing through this garden that I've recorded, and Bandita is the only one that's turned white. One of her brothers, Coffee, his tail went white one winter, and the tops of his ears went white, and his muzzle went white, and that was Bandita's brother back in 2016. So he showed some winter whitening, and then got to Christmas, and that process stopped. And another one of her brothers was here at the time, and he didn't show any sign of winter whitening, and the rest of the kits, I think she was one of 8. Just trying to look at the pictures up there. I think she was one of 8 or 7, and all of those kits had dispersed by then, so we only had 3 of her litter left here, and she's literally the only one. Her mother didn't show any sign of winter whitening, neither did her father, so this is obviously mixed up in the gene pool somewhere. And but we're quite high on the Yorkshire Wolds here, but the further north you go, the higher altitude you go, the more white stoats. The more snow, the more white stoats that you'll get to see.
Is the time her coat turns white due to the specific temperature outdoors, and does that trigger the gene?
Yeah, so it's in the genetics, and it's the day length as much as the temperature, because as I said, we've had really warm winters recently, and those, I captured 2014, we barely had a frost, and I managed to capture this wonderful white stoat on camera.
How many kits do stoats tend to have, and when do they have kits?
Yeah, so averaging around about 6 to 8 kits. Maybe slightly less, maybe slightly more. Some have been known to have 13 kits. Never seen anything like that myself. I've seen 8s, 7s, but not all of those kits usually survive. It depends on the prey they have out there and where they are, because rabbits, they've got a lot of problems with rabbit populations, with some new diseases, and as those rabbit populations crash, stoats are then very reliant on catching voles and birds like young blackbirds and stuff, and you imagine you've got a whole litter of kits. If you catch a half-grown rabbit, that's going to feed them all for a day. If you've got to catch voles, you've got to catch several voles for each kit, because they will eat nearly their own body weight every day. Some people say 20% of the body weight, but the kits eat way more than that, more than half of their body weight every single day.
How often do you see Bandita with your own eyes?
It varies. So some winters she has been very difficult to see, and more recently she has got slightly more calmer and coming during the day. So this year she's been coming more during the day to avoid her youngsters a little bit as well. So she will appear sometimes, just after dawn, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So this year has probably been one of the better years to film her. 2018, I was doing a lot of work with all the habitats, like building the actual wall, and I saw her during the daytime, maybe only twice. But where the wall is, my living room looks out into the area, so I can see her quite often from the house. I haven't seen her for a few days, so we've just got to check back on camera to see what she's been up to. But this year, seeing her with my own eyes, what have we been seeing her, Will? Maybe every other day or 3 times?
Yeah, I think before Christmas it was most days we'd see her.
Yeah, so this year's been pretty good, but just this last week we haven't seen her as much, so hope she's okay.
So Bandita has 3 kits, Ed, Olga and Bill. How do you tell them apart?
They're tricky this year because I've been concentrating a lot on different projects, and usually I get the perfect photograph of each kit, but we can show you some markings. There is some markings on the faces, so it's to do with the white fleck markings. Bill's, which side?
Bill's on the right side of Bill's face, he has like a half X.
Yeah, he's got like a half X running round his eye, which makes him quite easy to spot from a distance. But yeah, they're tricky. And Olga's like a little mini me. She's very much like Bandita. and much smaller than the males, much smaller. So,
are stoats considered pests?
yes. Depends who you're talking to. I don't consider them pests. But yeah, they're not well liked by gamekeepers and things. They've been trapped for decades and decades. So yeah, they are predators, and they will take some game birds. But filming Bandita here, I've seen her catch voles. I've seen her catch some rabbits. I've seen her have a go at squirrels, and I have seen her catch blackbirds, young blackbirds. Trying to think of the other things that she's brought in. She's brought in some young nestlings. Occasionally I've seen her with pheasant eggs. But she can't tackle a partridge or a pheasant. That just wouldn't be something she would do full grown. I've seen her bring in one pheasant pot, a little pheasant chick about this big. So that's the only game bird I've seen her eat. And that's in 4 years of filming her. But a lot of voles, they're very dependable on voles out there in the wild.
Sue R asks, how long will the White Coast last?
So we start the process in November. By December she's starting to transition really well, and then by March, by the end of March, she'll be transitioned more or less completely back, apart from a bit on the tail.
What's this one? Does the hair change colour, or is it replaced?
It's all replaced, yeah. It's like when it's done really quickly, they call it a catastrophic molt. So all the hair is completely replaced.
Victoria B, who's one of our mods on YouTube, asks, has Bandita ever had a kit turn ermine?
No, no, we're waiting for that day. Yeah, so she's literally the only one in our garden that we've had turn ermine over the years. So yeah, I've seen one on the other side, well, two on the other side of the valley from here. One may have been her kit, but there's absolutely no way of telling that. I have got some samples that have gone to New Zealand, but it's then getting a sample off, because one was run over the other side of the valley, and they've gone to get some DNA testing. So yeah, so maybe. So.
We'll probably take this as our final question, as unfortunately we can't get through them all today. But Holly Robinson is asking, how do you attract stoats to your garden?
Yes, so it's a lot of it's habitat and food, and some safe places to sleep. But they do cover wide areas. That's the thing with stoats. They can cover a wide area. The females have much smaller territories than the males, and you get different males. Some have a very small home range, and then others will cover a much bigger home range. But to actually have them on a daily basis is actually through feeding them, giving them some supplementary food. Otherwise, it would just be a very occasional sort of pass through of part of their wider territory here. But we do have, we see stoats here every day throughout the year, and that's due to popping a bit of food out. Right, so thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next Tuesday. And we'll bring you some more lives. And just before I go, quick one, we thought we were going to have another tawny owl egg this morning, and she's brooding quite well now. And the other big news is Luna was actually with us last year for the first year. So we've looked back at some of the footage. So she was with us last year for the first year, and she actually nested in a really old tatty plywood box that the back had blown off, and then a squirrel had built a drain there. So she nested in there last year, actually off camera, and she laid last year, round about the 19th of February I found the nest, I think, and so she's an early nesting bird, and she raised 4 chicks last year, 4 eggs, 4 chicks, and then we surrogated a few other extra chicks onto that brood. So yeah, so this is an owl that we haven't studied before, so all this behaviour we've been seeing is maybe perfectly normal for her. But just thought I'd let you know before you head off, and yeah, take care everyone.
If you'd like to check in on Luna, you can find her over on the YouTube.